Hello everybody. We're back with the Truth and Wisdom podcast. And are you truth or are you wisdom? What is your?
I'm dirt.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well,
you.
I'm whatever Justin is.
You sound like you're trying to be more Southern than you really are.
No.
It's like Kamala Harris at a political rally or something. Anyway, sorry.
Oh my gosh! Shots fired early.
Seeing if I can get you off rhythm.
I'm off now.
It's good to be here with you, Wes.
I'm sure it is. Well, let me take a drink. I knew I was going to be talking today or hanging out with you today, I guess you could say. And so listening to what you guys talked about last week, entering into the conversation on sports gambling and the turn of the seasons and what's going on around here. And I ask this because I'm guilty of what I'm about to ask you. But the question that's been going on in my brain is, what are the top, we can say top 5 or top however many you want to say, we'll put idols, top 5 idols that are a distraction to Christians in our culture, in our American culture. Because kind of the basis for that, yes, college football, I'm a big fan of college football. Yeah. And it is something that can influence my emotions and can take a lot of my
You feel
time.
bad when the Razorbacks lose, Wes.
I get pretty upset. Things have changed though since I've had a kid. Not as into it, I guess.
Do you have PTSD if I describe a foul ball falling somewhere behind the first base bag in foul territory in the College World Series?
I got so mad at that my wife got mad at me for how mad I got.
That's what happens in my home too. I just want to be mad at the Razorbacks, but then I get in trouble. So
the problem is that now I'm older than them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we're watching kids play, and we're getting mad at them.
When I was a kid, it was a lot easier to be mad at them because they're older than me, and now it's weird now. But that's kind of the basis of the question. And another thing I'd like to say, I heard this. There's a pastor in Georgia named Jeremy Morton, and I heard him say this one time that there was either he had an intern or he was working at a church in an internship role, something like that, with a man from India. And they became really close friends, very connected. And this guy from India ended up moving back to India to be with his family and to pastor church there. And so Pastor Jeremy wanted to go over there and see his friend, spend 10 days with him or so just because he missed him, his friends, and whatever. And so when he and his wife went to India, they landed at the airport. And as they were driving to this man's house, however they got there, he said, man, there's a lot of idols here, like actual statues, actual shrines, things like that. And
physical idols.
Yeah, actual things. And so when he got to his friend's house, he's like, after the whole cordial hellos and all these, he said, man, I'm surprised at how many idols there are just in the city. Like, I knew it was a thing here, but I didn't know it was like literally everywhere. And the pastor friend in India said, I said the same thing when I landed in America. And this is something that I never would have considered. So with that being said, in your opinion, what do you think the top ones are?
All right. Well, I can certainly give a few without thinking too much, but maybe just based on the way you frame that question, we should back up a little bit and explain, when we talk about idolatry, what are we talking about? Mm-hmm. Because I do think a lot of people have in their minds idolatry is Hinduism or Buddhism or, false temples or ancestor worship. And those are, that is idolatry according to Scripture, but I would argue idolatry is also, anything that you put in the place of God is an idol in terms of your significance and your passion and, something, if it can emotionally affect you, like what we're confessing is we have great families, great wives, great jobs. Our lives are better than we deserve. But if the Razorbacks fail to win a game in the College World Series, we can feel like jumping off a cliff.
Yeah.
That probably, in a loose way, fits the definition of idolatry, So I think in terms of this conversation, we're expanding the idea of what idolatry is to maybe things that actually consume our time and energy and resources in an inappropriate way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
that's a very good definition.
Now, I have a feeling when your buddy, this guy you're talking about, when he landed, he saw sports stadiums.
Yeah.
I mean, we have no churches that are half as large as the average college football stadium.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so a foreign culture would probably say, man, college football, NFL football.
A lot of worship goes on there.
Yeah, I mean, the arenas, the basketball. I mean, you start looking at where sports holds. I don't think we can get away from the fact that you and I are going to agree probably that sports is the number one idol in our culture.
Sure.
And I would argue that the stadiums prove that.
Yeah.
There are few entertainment venues, or fewer at least, and even entertainment venues have to use football stadiums. I mean, the real big entertainers, they get into a football stadium. Well, it was built for football first, so I think we got to put sports over entertainment, and it's definitely an idol in our culture.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's inescapable. But I'm betting when that guy landed, I suspect he was also seeing billboards that celebrated sexuality. Again, probably not overt pornographic, but in his culture, probably way too extreme in terms of its depiction of male-female sexuality. He probably was thinking of that as being an idol. Off the top of my head, I'm sure we could think of a few more, but that's what I'm assuming that he saw and call it idolatry. So anyway, we framed idolatry. Sports has got to be number one. I'm assuming you agree with that.
I agree. Yes. In my world, yes.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be number one for everybody, but it's probably...
And I think there's sections that break off of that. Regionally, where we live, college football will be that.
Yeah.
Baseball, kids baseball, softball, things like that.
Yeah, your kids' sports could be a whole separate idol.
Yeah, so where we live, those things are true, but I do know just from some lessons that I've taught recently that the amount of money spent on golf. So if we raised X number of dollars from now till 2030, we could end world hunger. I forget the total amount. But if you add up the amount of money spent in a year on golf, and you did that instead of raising the money for world hunger would end in 2026.
Yeah.
So now I like to play golf, but also know there's men that like to play golf.
Yeah, and golf as a recreation, fine. I think golf can have its place in terms of what people do in order to clear their heads, to lower their stress level, to be healthy. I mean,
sure.
When I play, honestly, I would love if we could walk more golf courses, but you can't because everyone wants to play so fast.
Yeah.
I'd rather, let's have a little pull cart. I'm not paying a caddy. I can't afford to do that, but man, give me a pull cart and let me walk 18. Yeah. That would relax me and be healthy at the same time. You can't do it because people got to play fast, but I think definitely that can become an idol to folks, and anything that you just pour a preponderance amount of money into can become that way. And sports is definitely all kind, even I don't, dare I say hunting, the amount of money the average person may spend on that in a region like ours. Again, I think on all this, I want to be careful in that hunting is not an idol. Hunting can be an idol. Mm-hmm. Golf is not an idol. It can be an idol. Sports is not an idol. It can be an idol. And, I know guys that some of the best time they get with their sons is when they all go to the hunting cabin. Mm-hmm. And they redeem those weekends. And it's really, really valuable. I know people who handled kids playing sports really, really well. Mm-hmm. But for every person who handled it well, I can name at least an equivalent number that handled it really, really poorly. Mm-hmm. And, it became in some ways an idol. And, of course, when I think of idolatry with kids' sports, I think of people who are trying to compete through their kids.
Yeah.
And that's a shame. Because in general, I think this is a fair statement. The better you were as an athlete, the less you're guilty of trying to achieve your dreams through your kids' athletics.
That's very true.
In general, the people I see that go whole hog into that tend to be people who they really weren't that good themselves. Mm-hmm. And so they're trying to live some dream through their kids. And like there's one guy in our community, I'm not going to name his name for his privacy, but he was a D1 athlete, great athlete. He coached both my boys for a period of time. He was the most relaxed, chill, laid back. Hey, let's learn these values from this game. Let's play the game right. He was all about the bigger picture of sports.
Yeah.
He was the best athlete that I know of, unless Corliss were to come back and live in this community. He's probably still the best athlete we've generated in a long time. He was so chill about it all.
Yeah.
But man, there's people going crazy up in the stands, and it's like they have two left hands and they're right-handed. It's like, come on, Yeah. So yeah, sports definitely an idol. Can't argue that one.
Yeah. So let's step back to something you just said. You said people that handled all these things that could become an idol. They've handled them well, redeeming time with their sons, redeeming times with their family, using it as a means of, I want to use the word escape, but escape in a good way. I guess good detachment versus people that have handled it in a negative way. Can you explain to me and to the audience what is a good way to handle this? Especially me having a daughter now that hopefully one day, like, I would like to go play golf with her. I would like to take her fishing. I would like to do these things. So what's the right way to handle these things that could potentially become an idol in our home?
Yeah. Well, I think the right way is to take a step back and go, so why do you want to take your daughter to play golf with you? Why do you want to go watch your daughter play softball or teach her how to, play catch? What's the end game? Because I think the end game determines the path you take in so many ways. And like for me, I'm a huge Razorback fan and huge sports fan, but I knew from the beginning I wanted sports to be a place of connection for me and my children.
Yeah.
And even, my boys love sports to a degree that probably my daughter doesn't, but my daughter still pays enough attention because she wants to be in on the conversation, and I think that's part of it. There was an ongoing conversation in our home about sports that is in some ways non-threatening, meaning, we can relate to that and we can enjoy that and we can send each other, we do a lot of texting now of, like, there were several crazy catches in college football over the weekend. We were texting those back and forth. That gives us a connecting point. And that was the goal I set out with from the very beginning. I wanted, because it's so much a language that I already speak anyway, I wanted to make sure that my kids could talk that language, and we would always have that as a fallback when, maybe life is crazy, maybe college is a distraction to them, and they're worn out and they're having to study all the time and they're stressed. Well, that's not when you go, well, tell me about your biology class. That's when you want to shift the conversation and have a distraction. And sports has always been that for us. But that was my end game. My end game wasn't, I want my kids to get a scholarship. I want I wanted them, I think it's really healthy, especially for young men, to be proficient at various sports so that they can hang out with their buddies and so that they're not embarrassed when, I don't know, it's just good. It's good for your mental and your physical mindset to know, I can, they say, let's go to the bowling alley. And you're like, okay, I've never bowled before, but I figure I can pick up, I'll figure it out. It's good to have the ability to relate to and be sports minded in some ways. It doesn't mean you have to be a PBA bowler.
Yeah.
So I wanted that for them too, just from a self-esteem standpoint. But our world is broken when it comes to self-esteem. Our world thinks you have to be the best at everything, and that's not it. I certainly believe in sports. It's just good to be capable. It's good to be proficient in some ways, and not to be afraid. And because it helps you engage with so many people. Even we had a holiday weekend this weekend, and pretty much our whole extended family was out playing pickleball, and blitzball, and all the cousins. That's what they do, is they play sports together. And boys, girls, it doesn't matter. Everybody's out there having a good time, and I think that's healthy.
Yeah. So as I listen to you talk about, yes, understanding the end game, but then you said the goal is not to be the best. It's just to enjoy, really. Yeah. And I could speak not only for myself, but probably for a lot of guys, especially in my age bracket, guys I hang out with. That's really hard for us to accept. And I think it becomes an idol, and it becomes an idol in my life when, yes, pride is heavily involved in it, to where it's no longer a thing I do. It almost becomes...
It defines you.
Who I am.
Yeah.
Yes. Because there's the level of... I feel like people will like me more or accept me more, respect me more if they see that I have done these things.
Yeah. Well, you want to put on a show and you want people to see, you know. So, yeah.
And so I see that being a real heavy. So what I hear you saying is, and a conviction that I'll leave here with today, yes, define the end game. Yes, I want to spend time with my daughter. Yes, I want to spend time with my kids, these things. But what is the ultimate, like, what is success in these things?
I think that's, when you have kids, it helps you with that.
Yeah.
Because I think we're probably wired quite a bit alike. I don't play sports a lot now because I'm so competitive that I've realized it is an idol, and or my bad temper gets exposed. The best way for me to control my temper is to not get in a situation where I can lose it. So and that's fine. I've reached an age where I'm willing to see that. So I think as an individual, we're wired in certain ways, and it probably makes us fall into ditches when it comes to competition and wanting to be the best. And like you said, ultimately there's a pride factor. We got to confess that. And but kids help us, because it was easier for me as a dad, I think, to remember the end game, and also to understand, if one of my kids had loved a sport to the point where they wanted to be the best, then that's fine, and let them pour energy into that. And, I'm not going to pay for them to go to $1 million sports camp. One, we didn't have the resources. Two, I'm not sure it's necessary. But you can encourage it to a degree, but it's got to be the wiring of that kid.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it helps when you have kids. You may be wired a certain way, but is your daughter going to be wired? And you got to know how unhealthy it is if she just likes to play, but you want her to love to play. Well, then what damage is there going to be done to y'all's relationship if you try to bridge that gap and you try to make her love it? The truth is, you can't really make somebody love it, I don't think. You can make them work. You can hold them accountable to this, that. You can create all kinds of arbitrary standards that you're going to measure by. But at the end of the day, if they don't have a real passion for it, they don't have a real passion for it. And it's going to negatively affect your relationship. And I would argue that's what we see with so many people in our culture. It proves it's an idol because they've lost... I don't want to say they lost their relationship, but they've poured time and energy and money into a sport, encouraging their kids, and it's not brought them and their kids closer together. It's actually driven a wedge between them. That's idolatry, because you don't even realize that the damage that you're doing to your own relationship with your child, because you want one thing and they don't share that passion. Yeah. It's a shame, but that's often what happens. I think having kids helps that. Yeah. Because I was able to kind of take a chill pill and realize I don't want to lose a relationship with my kid over my own sense of competitiveness. Yeah. I never coached my kids beyond a very young age because I felt like they learned better from other people, but also I wanted to be able to sit in the stands, zip my lip, and be an encourager. That's all I wanted to do. Yeah. Because I see too many dads stark raving mad on the sidelines, and their kids never get over it. Yeah. I know people that, hey, they're more godly than I am, but they lose their minds on a sports field. And it's a shame because you never get that back. Yeah. And I can sincerely say never had one of those moments with any of my kids. So
that's impressive.
Well, some of it is take a step back. Had I been on the sidelines every time, I'm not sure I could say that. But you sit up in the stands and you listen to all the other craziness, and you're just like, I'm keeping my mouth shut because these people are losing their religion. So.
I hear you. Here's another one that I think, especially my generation, especially in the social media world, which social media I think is on.
That could be,
But the idol of comparison, and I think it's more paralyzing than anything. But but from working for you for 5, 6, 7 years now, you're Greg Sykes, and you're not going to change Greg Sykes for anybody. And that's one of the things I respect most about you, and several other guys on staff too that are just like that. But at what point in your life, and it may have been your whole life, you've been this way, did you get to the point where you're like, I'm me, and that's just who I'm going to be? Because that's something I've struggled with. I know a lot of people my age that have struggled with that, and I think it's because we're constantly seeing other people's lives, right? But the idol of comparison, what is it, and how do we get rid of it, I guess you could say?
Yeah, what is it? I mean, I think that's pretty easy to identify. I mean, just when when you're prone to watch what everybody else is doing, saying, wearing, how they're behaving, and you want to mimic that, whether it's authentic, whether it's really who you are, whether it's what, anything that draws you that way. That's the idol of comparison in my book. I will say I probably don't deserve much credit. Nature, nurture, I feel like I came out of the womb. I just don't care. I mean, I went University of Arkansas. Everybody's pledging. Everybody's rushing. I had no appetite for that. And, I could say some negative things about the Greek system that probably not fair. I just didn't have a need to join an organization so that I could find other people like me. I mean, truth is, they either like me like I am, or I'm happy to be alone. I really don't need. So I've been kind of independent like that, and always have. Even like on the sports motif, if there was a team that everybody liked, I hated them because it annoys me.
Yeah.
I mean, now if you're born in such and such city, be a fan. I get it, but. I give you a hard time about Tom Brady and the Patriots, and it's like, come on, why'd you pick them?
Because he won a Super Bowl when I was in kindergarten.
Yeah, you wanted to be a winner. No, I don't.
Yeah.
But I mean, that kind of stuff always kind of rubbed me, and so I came by that natural, I guess. But that helps because I've never really sought that comparison. But then as I got older and I began to grow spiritually, I realized, there is one comparison that we're allowed to have, and that is to Christ. Am I becoming more and more like Jesus? And, almost everything we could name where you would say it's the idol of comparison in people's lives has nothing to do with Jesus. Like trends and clothing. And, I grew up, honestly, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad worked in a box factory, hard labor, 43 years in the same place. Relatively, it was a blue-collar job and wasn't a high-paying job, I guess you could say. We had everything we needed, but we were not a family that was going to go compete with the Joneses in terms of jeans and tennis shoes and sports equipment. I mean, we had what we could afford, and for some reason, I never resented what I didn't have. I kind of got tired of the people who had a bunch of stuff and flaunted it. It's kind of like,
that is
why would I want to be like you? Because you seem to think what you have is more significant than who you are. And so that helped me. And I think even with my kids, we've always tried to be mindful of stuff is just stuff. But who are you? Where's your significance come from? And if we're going to have a measuring standard, it's going to be, are we like Jesus? Are we more like Jesus today than we were yesterday? And even we didn't play the game. We never sit around, in this way, we want you to be like your mom, or we want you to be like your dad. Or no, we had one we want to be like Jesus. And that's the only standard that really matters. And I think if we can keep that in mind, you don't see any New Testament pattern. Jesus didn't care what the culture was doing. Jesus didn't care what people were listening to in terms of music around a campfire. He didn't care what the number one best-selling book was that everybody was reading. Culture was totally irrelevant to Jesus. I mean, and I think that's where we have to. It doesn't mean you can't enjoy music. It doesn't mean you can't read books. But if the whole culture's reading a filthy book that has nothing redeeming in it, why would we have to read it? And people are like, well, you want to read it so that you can talk to everybody around you. Like, well, if everybody else is getting filthy and nasty, do I have to get dirty in order to relate to them? I don't think so. I've never bought that argument.
Good point.
I want to be like Jesus, and if he wouldn't read it, then I don't think I need to read it. And I think that's how you get away from the idol of comparison. Is you got to measure yourself by the same standards that Christ wants us to measure ourselves by, and that's going to be, it's going to be holiness, it's going to be love, it's going to be, the different biblical standards that matter. It's not going to be what we have or how we look or any of those trends. And that's, you mentioned social media. That's where you get all the trends now. Is you can go online, you can see what everybody's wearing, what everybody's listening to, and just wears me out.
One thing that I have noticed with regards to comparison is just examining my own life. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about other people. Like, I have my own responsibilities. I have my own life, And so when I find myself wanting to compare or looking at what other people have going on in their world or what they have, don't have, etc. Like one thing that's helped me is I stopped and thought, they don't care what I'm doing because I don't really care what they're doing. So why
am I paying attention to you?
So why am I putting so much emphasis on comparing myself to someone else? Sometimes, especially what they called influencers or whatever, like they don't even know who I am.
No,
so why does it matter?
Yeah.
You know,
that's been a lesson in ministry too, just in the sense that sometimes you have conflict with somebody in church or this, that, or the other. You know, we all have it in our minds that that's all they're thinking about when they leave.
Yeah.
The reality is you're a pittance to them in most cases. You know, they got bigger fish to fry. They got a kid's sports game they got to go to. They got conflict at work. I mean, we're so self-conscious that we think everybody else thinks about us all the time, and the reality is they don't.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't. So
all right, so we've
named two.
We've named two. You think we can get three before Arlo cuts us off over here?
Well, he won't cut us off, but he's going to warn us. You know, I think we can get.
What's one more?
I can give you at least one more, and I think we can probably get more. I mean, we don't have to discuss this one. Politics. If politics is not an idol, there is nothing that can get people wound up and upset and emotionally unstable faster than talking politics. I mean, I started this show with a jab about Kamala Harris, and I figure some people turned us off, you know, and I could have started with a Donald Trump jab, just the same, but it's an idol.
So I see it being an idol in the sense that, one, in the Christian world, it's like, do I desire that we live in a godly country? Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think every believer would wish that to happen, you know? But to think that one individual will either completely save our country or completely destroy our country, I think is foolish in the sense of they're not God. Like, they're not God. They haven't created anything. They can't redeem anything. Genuinely, the only person that can make things new or make something come to life that has been dead is Jesus. So in and of itself, that's one truth. But then two, like, to say that one individual could do that is comparing that individual to Jesus.
Yeah.
And that's scary. Like,
and it becomes an idol when you lose the ability to listen and to hear. You know, again, Trump says ridiculous things all the time. Kamala Harris says, I'm not sure. Well, she's. I'd make jokes. I'm sorry, I shouldn't do that. I mean, it's hard to follow her sentences, to be fair. I mean, I'm just being honest.
I think she gets told what to say.
I mean, but the reality is they both say ridiculous things. They're both flawed in any number of ways.
Sure.
You know, again, people are going to have to pick and choose, and we could talk about the values to do that. But at the end of the day, it's lunacy to think that any of our political parties are going to save this country or bring revival or, you know, neither one of them are looking to Jesus for their platforms. I mean, and so, it's idolatry. If you invest so much emotional energy into thinking that there's a political solution to what's broken, it's idolatry. Again, it doesn't mean I'm going to vote. I mean, I'm going to be actively engaged in our nation's politics, but I think I have found the ability as I've gotten older. I can listen to either one of them talk, and I wind up laughing at some of the. I mean, it can hurt a little bit too, but I mean, I see the lies, I see the deception, I see the ridiculous things that are said, and you know, I feel like I'm okay when I can do that because I'm not suckered in, and I'm not excusing everything so and so says because I'm so drinking the Kool-Aid. So, so what we got sports.
Yeah, sports hobbies. I think you could just
sports hobbies.
Comparison.
Politics. I think entertainment. We kind of talked about
entertainment,
that. It can be subtly different, but I do not. It's idolatry the way we allow what Hollywood values to influence the way we think.
So I'm guilty of this. That was such a great movie. It had a lot of bad language in it, but you know what? That's the military culture.
Yeah.
It was a great movie. It had one really inappropriate scene, but the rest of the movie, really good. Dude, that movie was so funny. I mean, it was kind of inappropriate, but man, it was funny. I'm guilty of that. And
how would it go if people came to church on a Sunday and I dropped multiple F-bombs in the middle of a sermon?
But it was good.
It was a great message. I guess Mark Deaver, not Deaver, excuse me, I shouldn't say that. Who was the Mars Hill guy?
Mark Dever, I think.
No, Dever's out in Washington, D.C. He's a good dude.
I don't remember. I know you're talking about,
I don't want to be guilty of mischaracterizing somebody. Yeah. But the Mars Hill guy, I can't think of his name right now. He dropped a few, and I guess for a while he was riding pretty good until you realize, a guy who cusses like that probably
doesn't have a lot of self-control.
Talks down to women, has a bad temper, Anyway, so, I think that's it. So that we've got 4 that we've at least thrown out.
Number 5, what would you say? Number 5. So I guess in my age bracket, 20s and 30s, we're constantly on the pursuit of more. So, consumerism. But I think on the backside of that is comfort.
Yeah.
I want to be comfortable.
I think that's what fuels most of the consumerism. You're right. The idol of comfort. And,
yeah.
We don't have time to talk about it, so we won't go along. I'll say this. Jesus says that if you identify with him, you're going to have to identify with suffering. Mm-hmm. You look at how little he had when he was here on his mission. Again, I think we can have food on the table and we can have viable entertainment. We're not called to be aesthetically empty or anything. That's not what I'm saying. But there's nothing in the New Testament that says you get to be comfortable.
Yeah.
We're more comfortable than we deserve. Yeah. But the idol of comfort will kill you every time, gluttony or ease or So, we don't have to talk about it, but I think I'll give you that one. That's a good one. Yeah. So that's at least 5 we've established.
That's at least 5.
Right? That's pretty good for 35 minutes.
That's not bad at all. Not bad at all. Yeah, I think I'm going to walk away from this conversation equally convicted as I am encouraged, and my brain will continue to think of more. Because I think if we all sat down, we could take inventory of our own lives and be like, man,
I am come up with more.
Falling prey to all of these things. But if you could leave us with one last thing, one last question. If, say, I take inventory and I'm falling prey to these things, and you take inventory of your life, falling prey to these things, yes, we should confess these things to the Lord, and we should repent of these things. But what else do you think we should do?
Well, I think we touched on it. I think more important than anything, you've got to start asking yourself the question with everything you do in every area of your life, what is the end goal? Mm-hmm. Why am I doing this? What's the behavior supposed to result in? And the key end goal is to be more like Jesus. Mm-hmm. And hobbies can help us be more like Jesus, if nothing else, just as a distraction from stress or, but anything that's not helping you become more like Jesus is not really helpful. And so you need to make some modifications, but especially when it comes to things that maybe you're putting in a place of idolatry, ask yourself what the end game is. What is the goal here? And if you can't give a good biblical answer and a way of redeeming it, you know what? I think that's a good idea. Maybe you can live without it. Quit justifying it. Quit dismissing concerns and just say, I want to only do things that I know that I can. If I'm looking Jesus in the eye, I can articulate the end game of this and the value. Mm-hmm. Start there. I think it simplifies your life.
Okay. Well, amen. Well, with that being said, that's the episode of Top 5 Idols. Does Arkansas win on Saturday against Oklahoma State?
No.
Oh.
No.
Yeah, they're not going to. But anyways.
And for you sports bettors, don't bet on the Razorbacks.
Hey, it's only 7.5. But
yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate you letting me come in today, even though you made fun of me right off the bat.
Sorry.
Man, it'd be all right. Anyways, well, thanks again.
Thanks, Wesley.